Welcome! You are listening to the Fibre Muse podcast, and here we talk about how conscious crafting and intentional creation can lead to transformational impact and dive into stories of how we can make a difference through the power of knitting. My name is Francoise of Aroha Knits, and I'm joined by my co-hosts and best friends in the Fibre community, Chelsea of Fitch and Claire of We Love Knitting. So pick up your knitting and join us for this week's episode so you'll feel inspired to transform your yarn into experiences and moments. Hello there, Fibre Muses, and welcome to the very first episode of the Fibre Muse podcast. This is Frenchie of Aroha Knits, and I'm super excited to be doing this podcast today to share with you. But it's not just me on this podcast. I am joined by my lovely co-hosts, Chelsea of Fitch and Claire of We Love Knitting. And you can go ahead and unmute yourself, guys. I had to mute them because we were all giggling and stuff, and it was really hard to get started with this podcast because everybody was laughing and having too much of a good time. So Chelsea, hello. Claire, hello. How are you guys today?
Hi, we're good.
Hi. Hello.
It's hot here.
It is because they're calling in from Australia, Melbourne, Australia, and I am in Osaka, Japan. So we are like in the two different hemispheres right here, but we are all connected today through this podcast. Yay! So I'm going to do a quick introduction of who I am, but I have a feeling that if you're listening to this podcast, you already kind of know who I am, but I'm going to give Chelsea and Claire a moment to introduce themselves and a bit about what they do. But again, my name is Francoise, but you can call me Frenchie. Like, I've got lots of people who ask me, like, is it really okay to call you Frenchie? And I'm like, yes, it is totally okay. And I am the knitwear designer behind Aroha Knits. And I like to consider myself a yarn alchemist, someone who transforms yarn into beautiful designs. But I also really like to consider myself like as a knitwear designer who curates words, images, and patterns to connect us more deeply to the story of why we create, why we knit. For the discerning knitter like yourself, seeking to transmogrify knitting into experiences and moments that bless and uplift themselves and others. But now I'm going to take a quick step back and allow my co-hosts to introduce themselves. And let's start with Chelsea. Chelsea, hello, and who are you? What do you do?
Hi, everyone. I am Chelsea Fitch. Most of you probably have seen me around Instagram I'm at KnitFitch on Instagram. I'm a knitter. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I'm also the face and the owner behind Fibre Boss College, or Fibre Boss, the Fibre Boss brand, and the Fibre Boss Collective on Facebook. I'm a business and branding coach for fiber artists. That is what I do.
Yes, and Claire, what do you do?
Hi, so my name's Claire. I am an indie yarn dyer from Australia. My brand is We Love Knitting, and I run that with my mum. It's just me and mum, and we work out of my mum's shed, and we dye beautiful colours, and that's me.
Yeah, so I'm going to post everybody's links and places to find them in the show notes. And Chelsea, you look like you were about to say something.
I was just going to say that she's on Instagram and she's awesome too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Claire, out of all of us, Claire has the largest Instagram following, and I want to be exactly like Claire when I grow up.
I'm really popular.
Yeah.
And humble.
You can edit that out, right?
So we have a knitwear designer, an indie yarn dyer, and then a knitter/coach. But this is like a really nice grouping of people because we all have different perspectives. And so like that's kind of leans into the reason why I wanted to start this podcast, which was to basically talk, discuss, and dive deep into the impact of our knitting. And having three different perspectives, like Claire, since you dye yarn, the way that you impact the fiber community would be very much, different from the way that I would, and the way that Chelsea would impact the community and with her work as a coach and also as a knitter. But another reason why I wanted to do this podcast is because with Aroha Knits over the past few weeks/months, I've been really thinking about why I am in this business and why I design. And I realized that it's all about really exploring how our knitting can make an impact. And I'm very much basically like on a mission to start a movement. I guess this podcast is kind of like this vocal manifesto of that, because I believe that our art and work as knitters can make a difference, and we're more than just knitters. Like, we hear about all these like, we all know the stigma and the stereotypes about knitters being like, you know, these old ladies just sitting in their house all day just making these cute little things. And especially for us as knitters, we understand that there's something greater behind our craft that is more impactful than most people realize. So I just wanted, you know, I've been doing a lot of blog posts and stuff like that, but also wanted to start this podcast and also bring in some of my friends to also just have these discussions. And I know that it kind of sounds like we're going to get really philosophical and maybe like get really deep into these things, but it's also like just having fun, because knitting is also fun. It's also impactful, but it's like, you know, these duality of two things. So if this podcast sounds like it's always going to be like, you know, with our wine glasses and we're going to be stroking our chins like, knitting, you know, it's not going to be like that. We're going to have some fun with this too. But I definitely wanted to use this podcast as a way to explore that and also share this journey with you, because even though I've discovered why I've been like, why I want to be in this industry, like, you know, I want to make an impact, I'm still very much in the beginning stages of this journey. So I want to use this podcast as also a way to, you know, basically, you know, go on this journey together. But like I said, don't want to do it alone. So I have these two wonderful co-hosts with me. And so we'll be doing this podcast every 2 weeks. Hopefully we'll have all three of us here, but sometimes, because we're all so busy running our own businesses, sometimes somebody will have to take a break for that week or something like that. But I'll definitely be here. So anyway, let's get into the first little topic here, like a little nice icebreaker. I'm going to start with, what are you knitting? What are you working on this week? If you have any projects that you'd like to share. Chelsea, Claire, what are you working on?
I am currently working on a Siri cardigan. I forget the designer's name now. Linnea Ullman. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right.
Excuse the pronunciation.
Yeah,
everything will be in the show notes.
Okay,
show notes.
It's a beautiful cardigan. I'm only just up to the start of the yoke, and it's far too hot to be knitting a DK weight woolly cardigan at the moment, but I couldn't resist because it's so beautiful. And I'm using white gum wool, which is an Australian wool that's grown on a small farm in Tasmania, where it's completely ethical and cruelty-free and environmentally sustainable wool, which is amazing. And I've just started dyeing that, so I dyed the yarn. Yep, so that's me. That's what I'm working on.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm so glad that you're working with the white gum wool, because I once got a skein of wool in that fiber, and it was like so super soft. It's really lovely.
It is. It's amazing. I forget now. I think it's 17 or maybe 18. I think 17 micron. It's like the softest wool that I've ever touched. It's just so wonderful. And if you ever get so lucky to try some white gum wool, I highly, highly recommend getting it whenever you get an opportunity. Like, there's quite a few indie dyers in Australia that use it, and also you can buy it directly from White Gum. They don't have much of a color range, but a lot of indie dyers in Australia use it. The best place to find it is at Bendigo Show, the Bendigo Sheep Show, but also on Instagram you can look up White Gum, and they've got a list of people that dye their yarn.
Very nice. That's cool. Chelsea, what are you working on?
Well, I was telling Claire earlier that I feel like a knitting fraud, because I used to be this monogamous starter, and now I don't even start anything. But I am working on something. It's just very slow going. I am currently still working on, if anyone follows me on Instagram, they will be like, seriously, she's still working on that? But I am working on the Gather shawl by Andrea Mowry. And I am currently using, I'm a rebel. I like to mix yarn brands and yarn fibers.
Yeah, that's cool.
So right now I'm using 2 different brands. I'm using 2 skeins of Hazel Knits Artisan Sock in the colorway Cherry Blossom. And then other one I'm using is actually kind of a really little indie brand. It's called Bumble Birch, and it is from this dyer in Portland. Her name's Sarah, and it's a limited edition colorway. It's called Hurricane, but it's like the squishiest, softest. I don't even know. What is it? It's 75% wool and 25% nylon, but it is just, it's a different, I've never felt that. It feels different, but it's really cool. But I have probably been working on that same project for as long as Claire has known me, so at least a year.
Oh, jeez.
Probably longer. I was working on a sweater, but then the heat hit and other factors came into the mix, and I can't wear it at the moment, but I will probably finish that one up eventually too.
Soon, one day.
Yeah, I just had the sleeve to go. It was my first sweater, and I'm on Sleeve Island, I guess you would call it.
What's the sweater that you're working on? It's one of Hobie Locatelli's, right?
Yes, it is the Radiate Sweater. It's my very first sweater,
and it looks amazing.
Yes, it's made out of Claire's yarn actually, and it's a blue and gray, and I love it. I just am kind of stuck. So I'm a monogamous or a serial starter. I don't ever finish anything. I'm not a monogamous knitter.
You're the opposite of monogamous. You're like a bit tart.
I'm a knitting tart. If anyone didn't hear Claire say that, she called me knitting tart.
Knitting tart.
It's funny because being surrounded by Claire and Frenchie, everyone listening, they are like, they stick with it till the end, and I get distracted.
Well, you're busy with your own, like, your side of things on the business, so I think we can forgive you for that. Only for a little bit,
I will promise I will have something finished by the end of the year.
Okay.
I'm doing it. I put it out there, everyone.
Let's see. For me, what I'm working on, so I've been working on several projects for the Fibre Muse Dreamer issue. I finished a few shawls last week, and so now I'm getting finishing up on the next 3 designs that I need to do. So I'm actually got 2 projects on the needles, which is kind of new and interesting for me because I'm very much a monogamous knitter. Like, I like to focus on one project at a time. But
you're doing 2?
I'm doing 2.
What?
Whoa!
That's amazing.
I know.
She says you're cheating.
Oh, I am cheating. So the first project that I'm working on, I am using yarn from Holly and Ivy Dye Works in their Ivy sock yarn. And the colorway is called Speckles Rock. So you can probably guess what kind of colorway this is, but it's, so the base is like, it's a white background and then a whole bunch of just different flecks of colors on the yarn. So it creates a really nice speckled colorway. So with that yarn, I'm using that to knit a top. It's a new design, obviously. I don't have much time to knit other designers' work, so all these projects that I'm going to be talking about are basically new designs. But I'm just basically making a really basic drop sleeve top. But the one thing that I'm doing is that I'm knitting so it's basically just like 2 rectangles slapped together to create the top, but the rectangles are going to be knit on a bias. So, and I'm alternating between sections of stockinette and reverse stockinette. And I'll post some images of this in the show notes so you can exactly see what I'm doing. But it's really fun to work up, and I was like, with these speckles, especially for the Dreamer issue, I'm not one to really use like really eccentric colorways. So this is kind of brand new to me. So I really had to keep with really simple stitches, which was a challenge because I really like to work with intricate lace stitches and things like that. So having to go keep things really simple and find other ways to make these designs interesting was definitely a challenge. So I'm going to be very happy once the Dreamer is over and I can work on the Mystic issue because that's definitely more my comfort zone right there. The second project I'm working on is I'm using MYAK. Sorry, my voice is going out. MYAK yarns, they're Tibetan cashmere, so it's a very luxury yarn. It's quite gorgeous. And so I'm using 3 different colorways for this project. I'm using a colorway that's a natural, and then so the names of the other colorways are in Tibetan that I'm not even going to try to even pronounce, but I'll say that one color is pink and one color is yellow. And I'm basically kind of using the white as the background and working a series of striped cables around the edge of the cowl to make it look like little, I'm not sure how to explain it. Like I showed a picture to you, Claire yesterday, so maybe you saw it, but it's just like these color strands just working up the way of the cow, basically.
Like a barber's pole kind of.
Yes, style. That's it. Yeah, kind of like that, except much nicer, I think, than a barber's pole.
Yes. Yeah, with a candy cane or something. It's not cane. So much that color.
Yeah, but I guess I was kind of inspired for that design of like, I don't know, because it's like this is yarn from Tibet, and then this design idea came from. It's like I think it's like an English holiday, but it happens in May, and they have this pole, and then they start dancing around it with these ribbons, and they just like keep going around it until the ribbons are tied around the pole. Like, is that something I made up, or is that a real thing?
No, it's maple.
Is it a maple? Yeah, so I guess that's kind of like the inspiration for it. Yeah.
I like that. Those are pretty. Have you ever seen that?
I saw it on Gilmore Girls.
She saw it on TV.
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of like the image. Yeah, that's the image that came to mind when I was for that design, because it was really interesting because with the Dreamer issue, it's a lot of speckled, variegated, eccentric colorways. And then the MYAC yarn, it's solid, completely solid colorway. So it's definitely standing out from the others as being like, how does this really fit into this creative, eccentric issue? And that's the way that's the direction I went through, taking inspiration from a, celebration of spring. And there's just lots of colors during that time. So that's how I kind of worked that in there. So yeah, that's what I've been working on.
Always challenging yourself, Crunchy.
Yes, but I'm definitely going to be happy when this issue is over, because the Dreamer was hard. It's hard designing for this type of Fibre Muse.
You mean me? It's hard to design for me.
It's hard to design for you.
And me too, really.
Are you a dreamer?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have two dreamers over here.
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of like a mystic / I'm kind of finding that I'm kind of sliding over to seeker myself. So yeah, definitely dreamer is like the lowest on mine. It's like, oh, this is so hard. How do I be like colorful and creative and things like that? So I had to channel my inner Stephen West. That's who I thought when I was doing this. Anyway, so that's the projects that we're working on. Hopefully by the time we get the next episode out, I'll have both these projects done, because I am really behind on getting these done. Like, I should be done with all my projects by now, but no, I got 3 left. So recently
Okay, wait though, Frenchie.
Yes.
When Frenchie says she's behind, you guys, that's like, for a normal person, she's like on time.
I don't know. Well, thank you, Claire. But I do feel like, I had my own set of deadlines and I have not met them. So I feel like a failure because I haven't met my own deadlines. It's like the first time this has happened. So anyway, moving on to something that's not so like doom and gloom. So recently in the Fibre Muse Circle, we finished up the Giver Challenge, which was a week-long challenge. It was kind of a combination of a mystery knit-along plus some prompts that focused on exploring the Giver Fibre Muse, who she is, how she makes an impact in the community, and just having the people, participating in the challenge to really think about how they can incorporate what her magic. And basically she knits as a form of selflessness. She is very charitable. She likes to knit for other people. So it was just during this time to have people really reflect on who the Giver Fibre Muse is and just really learning more about her. Because I know, based on just like people who've taken the Fibre Muse quiz, the givers, we don't have a ton of givers. I think mystics and seekers are like the number 1 and 2 spots, and the givers is like a very small amount. But whenever somebody got the Giver as their result, they were always being like, the Giver, that's just like so lame. She's just like, I wanted to be something that was more exciting, interesting, like the Dreamer or the Seeker. And so this Giver Challenge was a really good way to kind of like also debunk some stereotypes about the Giver. Because she's also who I would consider to be a very, like, if she's passionate about something, she will go out and act on that, make it happen, even more than like the other types of Fibre Muses. Because especially like with the Dreamers, they like to start stuff, but they never finish them. Maybe. But anyway, so the challenge went really well. The mystery pattern was the Snowfall hat, and you can find that on Ravelry right now. It's available as a single pattern. But I was really happy that the challenge went well. People were able to finish up the hat, even during Thanksgiving week. Get that completed, as well as like participate in the challenge every day. I wasn't so sure how they were going to take to doing the prompts as well, but there were definitely a lot of people who shared some really interesting insights, and we're going to be sharing some of our favorite comments and quotes from people who participated in just a bit. But Claire and Chelsea, did you guys participate in the challenge, or no? It's okay if you say no.
Frenchie, I'm so sorry that I usually do all of your challenges, but this time I was just happening to be getting engaged.
Yay!
So, I mean, that's really exciting and awesome, but I missed the challenge, unfortunately. I might just go back and do it anyway at my own pace later.
Yeah. Well, let's just take a moment here to say congratulations, Claire, on your recent engagement. I'm just so happy for you. Yay! Claps.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Frenchie.
And then I will say I'm sorry, I did not do the challenge, but I followed it because I was busy helping the whole Fibre Muse issue get out on time.
Oh, yes. As for those who don't know, Chelsea, not only is she a coach and a knitter, she's also a graphic designer, and she's also my graphic designer. So all that beautiful work, like if you purchase the Fibre Muse Giver or Secret issue and you're like, oh my gosh, this is just amazing to look through. Like, it's so well laid out. That's all because of Chelsea. Like, that's one reason why I hired her, is because, like, yeah, I can do graphic design, but I think I would like to hire somebody who actually knows what she's doing. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, she did a really great job. I just like to sit down and flip through the scroll or whatever, flip through the issue and just take a look at the pages because they just look so pretty. So yeah, so thank you, Claire, for all your hard. Not Claire, Chelsea. For all your hard work. No, not you, Claire.
I was there for part of it while she was deleting the outline around one of the models. It was fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
Alrighty. She watched the monotonous stuff I have to do.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and share some of our favorites, do like the best of from the Giver issue. And I'm also going to post some images from the challenge, some of the FOs and the whips and stuff like that in the show notes as well. So you can actually see like the whole community, some of their works and stuff like that. But I asked everybody to find one quote or something that somebody said that they really resonated with them, just to share with everybody. So for me, I'll go first. So I am sharing this quote from Judy Phillips, and this comes from day 2, which the question was, the prompts that I had sent out to people was, how could the fiber community and the world at large benefit from having more Giver Fibre Muses? And she says, this question got me thinking about the terrific upsurge in craftivism over the past year or so. Most of us already knit for charity, but knitting for a cause you believe in takes the process one step further, I think. This can take a lot of forms. Just in case any kids are listening, I'll call this something else. The Kitty Cat Cap project was a phenomenal example, but equally important is supporting designers and yarn companies with a mission that inspires you. Organic and cruelty-free fibers, design collaborations like Sight is Life are 2 examples. And then she asked other people, do you know of any other designers who donate some part of their revenue to a cause? And so I really liked this one because she highlighted one aspect of the Giver Fibre Muse that people don't really we kind of take for granted or don't consider, but it's also knitting for a cause you believe in. And so during this past year, for example, like I know we're going to be talking about a political subject, but we're not going to get political about it, but I'm using this as an example of just like seeing the impact of knitting. But basically, like millions of knitters got together to work on this one project to make a stand for something that they felt passionate in. And so that was definitely like, that brought knitting to the forefront of everybody's minds. And we're able to see like, this is what happens when a whole bunch of people get together and have their voice heard. But also really liked how Judy was also talking about supporting designers and yarn companies with a mission that inspires them. Definitely, I really liked the Sight is Life. Have you guys heard of that collaboration? I think it came out last year.
Can you tell me about it?
From what I gathered, it was a collection of designers. I think maybe like designers like Melanie Berg. I have to double check if she was in this collaboration, but it was a whole, like these were high level designers and stuff like that. They got together, made a collection of patterns, and they donated either part or all of the revenue made from the pattern sales to this organization called Sight is Life, which is to help, I think, children in underdeveloped countries help with, with their eye health, because, lots of diseases, making sure maybe they get the glasses that they need, or just, regular checkups and stuff like that, just to make sure that they're taken, care of in that part. So that was a really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that it has the spirit of giving and a spirit of collaboration in that. That's a really cool thing too.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are both really good examples.
Yeah. And then since she asked, maybe we could talk about it here. Do you know of any other designers who donate some part of their revenue to a cause?
I do.
You do?
Yeah, you.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah. Been thinking a little bit about doing that more. Like last year, for sure, I started donating part of my revenue, but definitely for the giver issue, since I actually need to tally up the numbers and stuff like that, but I'm giving a portion of the sales from the giver issue to an organization in New Zealand. I can't remember the name, but it's basically a nonprofit organization that works on supporting and funding the Maori arts and crafts, whether it's in New Zealand or abroad. And being Maori myself, and also just wanting a way to help, my people and the community down in New Zealand any way that I can. I want to donate to them. And also maybe one goal for 2018 is to better support, like really make it part of my mission plan or whatever, to donate to them on a more regular basis instead of just like every once in a while.
Go ahead.
Okay. So one of my friends, a knitwear designer, Rachel Barish from Born and Raised, she was donating some of her proceeds to Planned Parenthood at the time that the American government had been cutting all of these incentives, and all of these poor women were struggling and not having the money to access the kind of resources that they needed. And so I thought that was nice to help young women in those kind of situations.
One thing I've noticed, Frenchie and Claire, because Frenchie, because we're talking to you as well. It seems like this Frenchie, they're very impactful, social. They're not afraid to talk about these like more controversial, if you will, topics and things. And I think that's really cool. But if you also look at it on the more conservative side, knitters at large have always been designers, knitters have always been trying to help out. I think we're some of the most like first giving type of people, because like look at all the newborn baby hats that always get done. There's we even like make I think that, what is that one with the breast cancer, the boobs, the actual like
the knitted knockers.
The knitted knockers. Yeah, that, and like knitting little sweaters for penguins and things like that. Like I just think the knitting community in our industry and is just so full of always like, we'll do whatever we can and we do it in like full force.
Yeah, exactly. If it's important to them, they will find a way to make it happen through their knitting. I think that's really important to remember. Like we can make it through our craft and our art, we can help people. We can make a difference.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I was working at a local yarn store, and there was one lady, she would come in and buy yarn every single week, and she would knit these tiny little preemie baby knits because they can only really wear them once or twice because they need to stay sanitary and everything. And so she just put a lot of time into making these gorgeous little knits for these tiny, tiny preemie babies just because she cared so much. And it was just so heartwarming.
Well, that's so cute. One of my favorite, I guess, what's it called? Projects or causes is when they knit for penguins. When the oil spills happen and the penguins get doused in the oil and they need to keep the penguins warm, they ask people to knit up little penguin sweaters. I think that's just a really adorable.
That is so adorable. And you know what? They actually had to start telling people because they had so many penguin outfits and they didn't have enough penguins.
See, like I said, we come out in like full force.
Exactly.
Look at World War II. Like
yeah. Oh yeah.
They were asked to do. They were asked to knit. Like it kind of, sometimes we kind of look at it as a a chauvinistic type thing, but it was like, that's what we were asked to do, and people did it, and it was their contribution. And I feel like that's like showing up in my power if I can do it, and I know how to knit, I'm going to do whatever I can to help, whether it's for my country or for penguins, the knitted knocker, like, because my grandmother had breast cancer. That's why I used her as an example. But I think we do whatever we can. And even if it's like something going on and nobody's asked for knitters specifically, we always are like, well, how can we help in some way? We're going to create some type of knitted thing to help out. Exactly.
And I really like what you said, Chelsea, the phrase you said, show up in my power. I think that's the phrase I'm going to start using a little bit more often. But I really like how you said that, find a way to show up in your power, discover your power as a knitter, show up and just be proud and loud and proud about your gift and use that to help change the world.
Yes, I love that.
And so, Chelsea, what was your pick from the challenge? What was something that you really liked?
I'm just going to say, Frenchie, all your prompts were really good, but I think your day 2 was like everyone's favorite.
It seems like that.
Because they had some really good ones. This one is from Karen Nicholas Moffett. I think I said that right. Yeah. And she said, one of my favorite things about the Fibre Muse is that they are a lot tougher than they seem. Whatever they care about fiercely. Family, friends, important causes. When they give of themselves, they give everything they have. They hold nothing back. The world can only benefit if more people apply that aspect of their inner muse to the things that really matter. And I really like that, because we were kind of talking about, like you said, when people find out they're a giver, sometimes they're like, oh, that's not very cool. But they are tougher than they think. Like, if I look at my mom she's not a knitter, she's a scrapbooker. But what she does is she's so giving. She's that hostess. Like, when you're at her house, she like takes care of you, right? She's a nurturer. She takes care of people, but she's constantly doing that. I find her like one of probably the most toughest, resilient people, because she's always giving of herself and not asking for anything. And it's just a constant. And I'm like, honestly, like I like to give. That is something I value and highly, but a lot of times I'm like, no, okay, I need some my me time, right? But my mother is like constantly giving of herself, and I love that we do that as knitters. They're tougher than they think. Like, we all might think they're these like quiet little people that just want to give all the time, but it's not. Like, when they give everything. They will do anything for anybody. And when Karen said that, I was like, yes, it's like a different aspect of the Fibre Muse that people don't talk about or normally notice.
Yeah, I like thinking of Fibre Muse as tough people as well. And I really love that Karen said that, because it made me think about the fact that sometimes when we think of people giving things, it seems as though that thing isn't really of value. Like, you give to Goodwill because you don't want that thing anymore. It's not like that. Like, we care so much about what we're knitting and we put everything into it, and then we will still give it. And I really like to think of it in that way. Like, we give so much value and we care so much. It's like giving more than $1,000 sometimes if you would to spend a whole month knitting a sweater for someone,
Yeah, we put our like love and our time into it. Even when it's stressful holiday knitting and gift knitting, we're always like, we may be stressful, but we're still going to do it. We're still going to like put in the time to do it, because we understand how much it's worth.
Yeah.
Talking about holiday knitting, are you guys doing any holiday knits?
Not this year. I did it every year since I learned to knit, and not this year. And it's just because I am giving in other ways this year. Obviously, because I can't finish a project, but
I'm not doing any holiday knitting. Firstly, because it's like 30 degrees here.
Oh, right. Yeah, summer. That's a thing.
And I find that if I give everyone, like, the kinds of small projects you can do for friends and family aren't really like summer things. So I can't really do mittens and hats and socks and stuff, because they're not going to be able to wear them for half a year. So I don't usually do holiday knitting.
Okay, well, I think I might be doing one. I guess my husband already knows it, so.
Oh, are you doing it for him?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's exciting.
But once I get the yarn for it, I'll talk a little bit more about it.
Does he see your Instagram? Can you show us on Instagram?
Yeah, he sees my Instagram, but he already knows he's getting something for Christmas. Like, he picked out the yarn and stuff, and he's like, I want this. I was like, okay, I'll make it for you. So.
Oh, I remember you wanted an electric green yarn. Is that what that was?
Yes. Yeah.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. Anyway, actually, for Chelsea's pick, there was something I wanted to add to that. I'm going back to the whole thing of like when people get the giver Fibre Muse. I think there's also a lot of pushback against getting that result, because when we think of giver, like let's play this word association game. When I say giver, what words come up to you? For me, it's like motherly, weak, pushover, and things like that. Like, what words come up for you?
That's like that.
Quiet.
That hurts me.
That people think I'm getting to a point there.
She's got a point, but normally like stereotypical, like quiet.
I know. And, I don't think that you're wrong in saying that. I think that is sort of society's perception. And it's hurtful, because for us giver types, we don't see ourselves like that.
Exactly. And also it's like, so another reason, for going back to like the reason why I'm doing this podcast and stuff like that is to show, so like, when knitters in just general, we think, we're crafters, we don't make art in comparison to like the men who are makers and artists, whereas, the woman, we like make dainty little things. And so it's kind of like this duality of showing like knitting, it can be art, it can be kick butt. I'm trying to keep this podcast relatively clean, but, it can also be, it can be amazing and, powerful, but also, what's wrong with knitting being soft and vulnerable and being, what's wrong with having those like, more feminine traits that's associated with knitting? Like, what's wrong with that? Like, it can be both things.
Exactly.
Both things are good.
Yes. And not to get like philosophical or like woo-woo or anything, but I feel like that's okay with your tribe, Frenchie. Yeah. Like every person needs feminine, masculine in their life. Like everybody does. Like all women need feminine and masculine traits. They all need that balance, and there's nothing wrong with feminine. Yes. I don't think there is at all.
No, you can still be very feminine and still be a feminist and powerful as well.
And be able to make an impact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wonder Woman is my alter ego.
Yeah, so that was the point I just wanted to make about the givers, and also just about knitters in general, like this duality, that it's possible to be, more masculine and like, think of those typical masculine traits. Like, it's possible to use knitting for that, but there's nothing wrong with knitting being those more stereotypical feminine traits and things like that. Like, it's
exactly. I like fluid. How you put that.
Fluid. Anyway, Claire, what did you pick?
So I picked one from day 2 as well. Fantastic prompt. So mine was from Jennifer Ong. I think that's how you pronounce it. Ong. Okay. So Jennifer says, the fibre community and the world at large could benefit from having more giver muses in many ways. But the first one that came to mind is that more people would know that they were loved and not alone, which seems increasingly important in a world in which it seems like too many people are isolated and lonely, despite all the ways in which we have to communicate. And yeah, so that one really resonated with me because, I feel like the way the world is today, we have so many options to contact each other. Like, she's so right. We can Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook or Voxer, or there's a million ways to communicate. And sometimes those systems, like Facebook in particular, you have like this small level of connection with everyone in your life that's just sort of there at very easy access. And I think then people sometimes stop putting as much effort into maintaining friendships, or it's not necessarily always the case, but it can be isolating. Like, you can also see all these people on social media like going about and doing all these amazing things, and you're just sitting at home and you're not doing anything, or you know,
knitting.
Yeah, and like sometimes it also does do that for me. Like when I feel like I'm fulfilling that amount of social interaction by being on Facebook or Instagram, I'm less likely to feel the need to go out and see my friends in real life because I've already like ticked off that box for that day, if you know what I mean. So I do end up spending a bit more time at home, or you know, that it's and there are some people that do get very isolated. Clearly communicate to someone that you love them, because you can put your time and care into making something beautiful for someone, and it's just a really nice, tangible, physical thing that you can do to show how you care.
Yeah, I really like that. I also find it quite fitting that you, Claire, chose one that talks a little bit about social media a bit, like use that because you're like the social media queen, and also you're just like this is a little bit of a tangent about what you do, Claire, but like for your Instagram classes and stuff like that, you always emphasize the importance of communication and engagement. So I thought it was just really funny, or fitting, I should say, that you chose this one. But this actually kind of reminded me of a advertisement that was going around. It wasn't an advertisement. It was I guess it was a promo for a charity, a nonprofit organization. But basically it first started as a social experiment. Some guy, basically like the same age around us, he pretty much locked himself up in a home for a week, no access to the internet, and he couldn't go outside. He couldn't talk to anybody. So he was cut off from all communication. And with like in a few days, he was already like, I just cannot handle not being able to talk to anybody or be able to interact with anybody. But basically the point of that ad was to show that there are a lot of elderly people who go through that. They don't have access to the internet, or maybe they don't know how to use it, but they are just alone all the time. And just being by yourself and sometimes stuck in your own head just makes you just not only makes you unhappy, but I'm pretty sure it could have some really devastating mental effects as well. So, taking some time to knit and visit somebody, and that could really help, brighten up their day. And it's also just really interesting that with the rise of social media, we can get things all the time. Like it's, very much go, that instant gratification. And knitting is a very slow activity. Like we have to, like when people, like, we hear all the time from people who don't knit, they're like, oh, I wish I could knit. I just don't have the time or patience for it. But it's just like knitting teaches us that patience, which is a nice thing to balance out that instant gratification, that need to get everything right now. Knitting teaches us to like slow down and just enjoy the moment, and to, take the time to, enjoy the craft, basically.
Yeah, I so agree with that. I'm very much a person that needs everything instantly and it has to happen now, and I get anxious if I don't know what's around the corner. But knitting is just this wonderful thing for me that just brings me back into the moment, and I use it for my mental health every single day of my life, and it's just so amazing.
What I actually really liked about this, and I didn't notice it until Claire was reading it this second time around, was that her comment was the exact reason I started knitting. Like, I started knitting because I had just had a little baby. I was in the middle of a country where I didn't speak any of the language, and I couldn't do anything. Like, I couldn't work. I was just laying there with a baby. and anyone like that kind of understand that, like at the beginning, they just lay there. So you can't really do much. You can't play with the baby. I don't know. It sounds weird, but I got really lonely. I didn't have friends. I didn't have anybody. And so, like, long story short, I just remembered wanting to learn how to knit. So I was like, okay, darn it, I'm just sitting here. I'm going to learn how to knit. And I taught myself how to knit. And the first day that I learned how to knit, I learned about Ravelry. And the minute that happened, I just all of a sudden, I found people. I found my people. I found loved, even if it is online. I learned that knitting is probably the oldest, if not, I'm going to say that it's like one of the oldest traditions in the world that together. Like, think of knit nights, think of knitting circles, think of spinning circles, like anything like that has always brought people together. And I think that that's what's really powerful about our industry is like, like, what's her name? Jennifer said was that it makes you feel loved. It makes you feel a part of something. The industry itself does. And I think that's really powerful.
I so completely agree with that. I mean, firstly, it brought the three of us together.
Yes.
So that's pretty amazing. And yeah, I was in the same situation, very similar to Chelsea, but it wasn't because of a baby. It was because I had some mental health issues. I'd isolated myself too. And the thing that got me back into the community and just active again was the knitting community. And now it's become my entire life. It's what keeps me going and it makes me happy. And all of my best friends in the world are knitters and from the knitting community.
Yeah, I definitely agree to what you guys are saying. I think I started to knit as well because I was feeling lonely and isolated, because when I first was learning how to knit, I was living in the States and my husband, my fiance back then was in Japan. So I picked up knitting as a way to help like take my mind off things and to create something beautiful in my downtime and stuff like that. And then when I moved to Japan, I, up-leveled that to taking my hobby as a knitwear designer to an actual business. But definitely knitting gave me, basically kind of gave me that sense of purpose. And it was just, like what you're saying, Claire, like we use social media, like especially Instagram in particular, that's what brought us all together. But I feel like if we didn't know how to knit in the first place, we wouldn't have, gone to Instagram and found our tribe and then found us all here together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you so much, you guys, for sharing your picks from the Giver Challenge. I'll be sharing those in the show notes along with some of the pretty images as well. And talking about the Giver Fibre Muse, by the time of this recording, when it goes live, the Fibre Muse Giver issue will have been out for a couple of weeks. And if you're looking for your next holiday project, or even knitting for yourself, we didn't really touch upon that, but one of the aspects of the Giver Fibre Muse is also learning how to practice self-care, because we give so much to other people that sometimes we forget to give to ourselves. So the Giver issue really focuses both on, one-skein projects that are good for giving away as gifts, and also some really nice, more indulgent projects so you can knit up for yourself, because in order to give to other people, you have to give to yourself to make sure that you are taken care of. Maybe we'll talk about that in a future episode as well. But again, also, Chelsea did the work as the graphic designer. So if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, this looks so pretty, that's because of Chelsea's work right there. And you can find the issue to that, the link to that issue if you want to pick up a copy in the show notes as well. But also today sees the release of one of the patterns from the issue. I'm releasing the single patterns from the Giver issue bit by bit over the upcoming weeks and months. So this week's pattern is the Shield Against Grief. And so this was a pattern knit up with in Shibui's drift yarn. But the main inspiration behind this design comes from one of the articles in the issue. So sometimes when I'm knitting up the patterns, sometimes the story for that design kind of like, I just allow myself to just go along with the flow and just see what stories come up for that. But for this particular pattern, one of the articles, which was written by, let me see if I can pronounce her name, L.A. Bourgeois. She wrote the article, The Morning Shawl, in the Giver issue, and it really resonated with me, and I thought this particular pattern that I was working on was a good fit with that issue. So I just wanted to quickly read an excerpt from that article, and hopefully if you have the issue, you've read the full article already, but I really like what she wrote here. So she writes, when grief ambushes someone I love, I want to wrap them up in my arms until the love I am pouring into them mends the tatters, stitches up the tears, and fills that empty space. Usually, I do not touch them for fear that I will break their first side and leave them helpless, crying for the remainder of the day. To replace that hug, I create a morning shawl. With the morning shawl in place over their shoulders or around their neck, my friend knows my love and my thoughts, and that big old hug travels with them throughout their day. And during the time of our correspondence, when Bourgeois and I were corresponding back and forth, she gave me some recommendations for what type of patterns that I've done would be appropriate for the morning shawl. And she said her requirements for morning shawls are that they include mostly simple knitting and can include up to 3 colors. And so I thought that this particular pattern that I was working on, A Shield Against Grief, pretty much fit that description because it's very simple eyelet stitches with some slip stitches, and it's all worked up in one nice color, and it's meant to be really big so you can just hug yourself up in there, and perfect for gift giving. So You can find that pattern as well in the show notes if you want to pick that up. If you didn't want to get the full issue, have that pattern available as well.
I just want to say real quick that from doing the graphic design, I saw all the patterns and I feel bad having a favorite. They're all beautiful, but that one was my favorite, that shawl, just the meaning behind it, everything. It just touched my heart. And it's just like, I got to finish my stuff so I can knit it because it's gorgeous.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorites as well. And also the Shibui yarn, just so soft and amazing. Like all the yarn brands that I've worked with are, they're all really unique and special in their own way. But Shibui, there's a reason why they're as well known as they are, because their yarn is spectacular. And it was just a joy to
agree. I just tried it for the first time yesterday. Oh my goodness. I found this beautiful color at my local yarn shop. It's discontinued now. It's called Honey. It's like this really nice brown. And I was like, oh, I need to buy like the rest of what they have in that because the color is discontinued. It's such a good yarn.
Yeah, definitely agree. So I think that's pretty much it for this week. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in for this very first episode of the Fibre Muse podcast. Definitely know that since it's like our first time, we're still trying to figure out like making this flow and having it maybe not seem so all over the place. But you know what? It's the first time we're going to, it's a journey. We're going to get better along with it. So hope you join us for the rest of the ride. So you can find me pretty much everywhere online under the username Araha Knits. You can find my website at www.arahaknits.com, and that's also where you can find all the information about the Fibre Muse Quarterly and all my patterns there. Chelsea and Claire, where can people find you?
You can find me, Chelsea, at KnitFitch on Instagram. And if you are in the industry and do work in the industry, yarn dyer, designer, yarn shop owner, whatever it is, if you work in the industry, you can find me on Facebook at the Fiber Boss Collective. It's a Facebook group. You can find me over there.
And you can find me, Claire, at We Love Knitting on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, but I'm not really there that often. So the best place to find me is on Instagram. And I have lots of beautiful photos of yarn up there. And then you can get to my website through Instagram.
Buy Claire's yarn. Buy her yarn. No, seriously, guys.
If I have any in shop, I don't know if there's any there at the moment. But hopefully, there will be. When this airs, I'm sure I'll have some in the shop.
I literally just bought my first skeins of yarn in a year that aren't Claire's. Just saying.
Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for joining me. Chelsea and Claire, thank you so much. And thank you to you, dear listener, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Fibre Muse podcast. If you would like to contribute your story to the show, just send an email to hello@arahaknits.com and you might just hear it on the air. If you enjoyed the show, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes or on YouTube. Really appreciate it. Until next time, continue transforming your yarn. Bye.